Hi, this is Matt, and today I'm looking at the Dell Wyse Converter for PCs. This is a tool that allows you to take a Windows-based, typically PC, desktop, laptop, and convert it into sort of a thin client style operating system. There's various solutions out in the market, some based on Linux, some on Windows, some based on Chrome, but the solution we're looking at today is based on Windows. This is version 2 I'm testing and demonstrating. This is on Windows 10 1803 build. That's Enterprise 64-bit. The process of installation and conversion can take sort of around half an hour. So what I'll do is I will go on mute throughout, because I'm not going to talk solidly about nothing throughout that whole time. But what I'll do is I'll kick off the install process and then sort of give a bit of background whilst that's going through, and then I'll put the mic on mute throughout and kind of give a few updates as to what's happening. I'm installing the converter into a Windows 10 OS that's built on a virtual machine. That's purely for video. That's not a supported configuration, which is why you're seeing a red X there. However, I have gone through all the other prereqs with success, so that will go through. So let me just kick that off. Okay, so I'm going to agree to the license agreement, to the EULA. I'll do the typical install just to keep things simple. Okay, so just tell me what it's going to do. It's going to install the Wyse device agent, the Horizon client, Citrix client, type VNC, those sort of things. So I'll go through there. The default account passwords are in the admin guide, but I'm going to set up my own. These are the accounts that are used by the conversion kit that basically, once it reboots, you're going to an admin mode, it'll make some changes. That's where you'll be able to configure your Horizon connections, the type VNC settings. And then when the users were using the environment, they would go into that user account. They will also log in, so it's all quite simple. These are the other things that's going to be done. So like .NET's going to be installed or updated, Visual C++, a few other prereqs. So I'll let that do that for me. Okay, so that's now known process, so I'll leave that to it. As I say, I will go on mute a couple of times and come back. But before we do that, just a bit of background. As I said, this is a conversion kit for Windows. The supported operating systems are Windows 7, 32-bit and 64-bit, SP1. And obviously, a sort of recommendation is that you patch it and it's all up to date. Windows 10, Enterprise or Professional, both 64-bit. When you do the installation, as I said, it will create 2 accounts, Wyse admin, Wyse user. So make sure that those accounts don't already exist. It's probably unlikely that they do, but just a word of warning, if you were sort of already a Wyse customer and had used those accounts for something, just make sure they don't exist on the machine already. As I said, it will install the device agent, which will allow you to manage the device centrally, or manage the operating system centrally, as well as installing the VMware Horizon client, the Citrix receiver, and type VNC. VNC could then be used by the help desk. So if you did have potential problems or issues, the help desk can shadow you and troubleshoot and support the end user. There are some silent install options. There's ways to install it centrally, but for the purpose of the video, I'm just doing it all locally. So I just ran the executable within the VM. As I said, there are ways to do it via a silent install, so they could just do it all from a command line. So then we'd have skipped that setup wizard. In terms of other prerequisites, just recommended that obviously the version of Windows is genuine and licensed. Those user accounts don't exist. You've got at least 2 gig of free space, that you disable AV, disable secure boot. As part of this, when it's installed and finished its cycle, you will have a write filter. What that write filter does is protects the operating system. So when that user goes in, if somehow they manage to delete something or add a new connection or change something, a simple reboot would revert it back to its previous state. So it's almost like a snapshot. So it just protects the operating system, protects the files. Equally, if you sort of got some sort of malware or virus or anything like that, then potentially just that reboot would correct it as well. Okay, so as you can see, that's progressing a little bit. So at this time, I'm just going to drop it onto mute for a bit. And as we continue through the install, I'll take it off mute and just add a bit of commentary and just let you know what's going on. So at this stage, you can see that it's actually doing the application install. So that's why the VMware Horizon client shortcuts appeared. And it will follow up and then do the Citrix receiver, followed by the tight VNC server. So the reason it's server is in that scenario where the help desk was shadowing this operating system, this machine, obviously that would then be the server in that kind of client server architecture. So as you can see, it's just going through those installs, and after that's completed, it will do a reboot and start to apply some of the customizations and that write filter. So you'll also see some changes on the desktop. You see the wallpaper change. You'll see those accounts get created. But yeah, I'll go back to mute and we'll come back to it shortly. There you can see it's actually installed that Wise admin account, and it's going in for the first time as Wise admin. What will happen is because of the virtual machine, the way that the VM tools is integrated, I think we'll find that the resolution is really high. So what it will say is that VMware Tools has made some changes. Do I want to apply them? So I'll actually go through another log off and log back in. That's not really that normal from the installer of the Dell Wyse software, but that's just, I guess by virtue of the fact I'm doing this in the virtual machine. As you can see, that's exactly what happened. So it's going back in now. You can see it's resized, and that's a lot more user-friendly. Obviously, it's not as small as it was previously. Okay, so now we've gone back in, the Dell Wyse PC Converter should resume. So sometimes it just takes a little minute or so to continue to where it left off, but that should go through and start to apply some of those changes. I think you can see down the bottom there's an icon, so there's some config going. For the purposes of what I'm doing here, I'm not actually going to use the Citrix receiver or configure it, so I can actually close this. But this icon down here, I believe, is just the restart of that conversion. So you can see here that it's saying it thinks it's going to be 30 minutes. From my experience, it doesn't take that long. Sometimes a little bit close, just depends. I mean, this is a relatively low spec virtual machine that I've created. So if I applied some more vCPUs in memory, it might be a little bit quicker. But anyway, I'll just leave this going and we'll come back shortly. Just what you saw there was some of the desktop customizations happening, so the wallpaper, those sort of things. That wasn't me doing anything and clicking to anything. That was all automated. So when you saw it come up and select the wallpaper, just to confirm, that wasn't me selecting a specific wallpaper. That's all scripted. That was being done for me. So apologies, the image went off then. That was I was just bringing up something on my second monitor, and obviously it just minimized the application on that first monitor of the install. So apologies for that. I'll try not to do that again. But as you can see, we're sort of zipping through. Seems to be a little quirk in the time there. It obviously started at 30 minutes and dropped to 5 and sort of went back up to 15. So I'm not sure how it calculates that time. I must base it on something where you are in the cycle, but yeah, that's something I'll feed back to the Dell team just to see what maybe causes it. It could just be based on some metrics from that virtual machine or something. But anyway, it's not hugely important. It's not affecting the install or anything. So we're going to have a similar issue to the one we saw when Wyse admin went in for the first time. So it's going to go in and it will bring up a message from VMware tools. So we'll need to do that sort of log off back in just for it to resize and go back to a more user-friendly resolution. So I'll just let that go in for the first time, and then I'll click the button and it will come back in again. Yeah, you can see exactly what we experienced with the Wyse admin account. As I say, this has got nothing to do with the Dell Wyse PC Converter software. This is more of a fact that I'm using a virtual machine with VMware tools installed. Okay, there we go. Again, a bit more user-friendly. So it will now go through and make some additional changes. And then you should see that wallpaper get applied, and that can, the install finish, and it gets to a state of being ready where we could actually deploy it to a user. So again, I'll just leave that to go through. Again, that's all scripted. What that's doing is the desktop customizations for the Wyse user account, whereas you were doing it for the Wyse admin account previously, is my understanding. So again, there's nothing I'm clicking on, there's nothing I'm accepting. That's all scripted, that's all part of that install and system config. Okay, so this should be the final restart. It would have just finished applying those config changes and environment settings to the Wyse user account. That will just be going through its reboot, and when it comes back up, it should go into that Wyse user account, and you'll see the cosmetic changes, so the wallpaper and those sort of things. And then you'll actually see what it looks like to the user. So because that auto config has been set for like that auto login, basically what would happen is that if I wanted to make any changes, I need to go back in as that Wyse admin account. So you have to basically break that auto login cycle. So if we go across to the operating system there, okay, I was going to say I'm not sure why internet's not working, but that's back up now. So we can see here that it's a fairly sort of openish OS. There's still some stuff there, but typically as part of the build, you want to make these changes. You might want to hide additional things. You might want to remove certain browsers, but you can see that as part of this, the IE shortcuts come to the screen, as is Horizon, as has the Dell Thin Client application. So we'll take a quick look at that. You can also see the RDP shortcuts there, as well as Citrix. So what it's really done is just delivered sort of a typical desktop for any type of desktop virtualization or server-based computing project, whether you're using Citrix, Microsoft, or VMware. So in here, great for sort of support details. So you can see, what OS you're running, what platform, what build. Go through CPU config, disk space. So again, if you were the end user, you have any problems, you want to phone the help desk, anything they ask you, you'd be able to typically grab from there. So if I close that, and if memory serves me correctly, I do the sign out. Okay, so what I did there is I held down the shift key, and essentially holding down the shift key breaks that auto logon cycle. So I'll switch accounts to Wyse admin, and I will put in the password I set. So when this goes through and we get to the desktop, you'll see a couple of additional applications and components I have access to that you don't as the Wyse user. One of those things will be the write filter. So I'll have the ability as the admin to disable that write filter. And really what you could do then is, you could disable it. You can see there there's a kind of a script on the desktop to disable and re-enable. So I could apply disable. Essentially what would happen then is the machine would reboot, and then I could make those changes. And then when I'd reapply, they would stick. So if I was just going to deliver, say, VMware Horizon sessions, what I would do then is I'd do the disable, it would do the reboot, and that's then an unlocked operating system. And then I can make those changes, remove the software I didn't want, add additional agents if I wanted them, make admin changes and settings, password settings, either to those local accounts or to the type VNC settings, and then I would re-enable. There'd be options around the management tool. I don't think the expectation is that if you deployed 1,000 of these, you go and set 1,000 machines and make the changes. There'll be mechanisms there within the admin tool, as far as I'm aware, to kind of bring this config back and deploy it en masse. But that's certainly something you can look at, and maybe in a subsequent session, and go into in a bit more detail. But the purpose of this video was to capture that install and what it looks like, and a bit of that sort of config experience. So thanks for your time, and hope this has been of use.